Howdy, wee peeps. Westlake here. Hey, if you're anything like me, your church has probably had to pivot to some sort of online situation. So I'm here at my church in Dallas, Northway Church, with my friend Connor, our production director. Our video communications guy Ryan is here. Wanted to just walk you through today things that we've acquired in kind of a last-minute scramble to make pre-recorded online church happening. We decided not to live stream, so we're recording stuff during the week and then putting that up on Sunday for our people. And so I just wanted to take a second and give you kind of a rundown with Connor and Ryan of the audio and kind of recording stuff that we're doing to make that happen, and then kind of a brief overview as well of video land, lighting, cameras, action, all that situation. So, Connor, talk to me about, we're going to start with kind of computer, kind of a recording hub of our setup. So talk to me about the recording software we're using and kind of what we're doing to like record audio in terms of what we're plugging into.
Yeah, sure. And what I'd love to say first is that this is what we've decided is best for our context and our situation based on like our input needs, our output needs, just what we're hoping to do. So this is by no means the absolute necessities or just the one way you have to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it, and this is just what we chose. So with that said, yeah, we are running all audio into and out of a device called a UAD Apollo X8P. It's a recording interface, and basically that allows us to capture audio from our instruments and our vocals and take that in and process it in the computer. And it also has outputs that allows our musicians to hear what's going on, to hear their own mix. And so that device worked really well for us because it gives us inputs and outputs. It has as many of both of those as we need. And so when we're taking in the audio from the instruments and the vocals, that is going right into the back of that unit, and then that is getting sent to a computer that has Pro Tools on it. And so we're recording all the audio with software called Pro Tools. You don't need Pro Tools. You can use something else. You can use GarageBand. You can use Logic. Lots of different ways, again, to do this. We're using Pro Tools. And the other great thing about the Apollo is that it comes with a software called Console. And so it's another software that sits on the same computer, and that allows us to actually like mix all of the instruments as if it was a physical mixing board. It's almost like the exact same thing. So we can take in the audio and we can mix everything right there on our computer, and then Pro Tools captures that. And so we like it because it's really mobile. It's kind of like you have a whole board, but it's like on your laptop, so you can fold it up and put it in your backpack. And then it is one rack unit that takes all of our audio and then also gives all of our musicians what they need to hear.
Yep. So we're plugging in all of our microphones into the back of that, and then it's got audio output because we're using in-ears while we're recording this stuff. So that enables us, we're running a click track from Pro Tools out of the Apollo into our headphones, just like you would if you're using Avioms or something like that. So think about your recording interface kind of as your soundboard like you had at church, minus physical faders, and Pro Tools, or in our case, with using universal audio stuff like the Apollo Console, your faders live in your computer. So that's kind of how we're recording, capturing audio. So talk to me now about like the actual instruments or microphones that we're using. I know for acoustic, one thing that we like about the Apollo is that it's got a built-in DI, so we can just run a single 1/4-inch cable out of the acoustic straight into the front of it and not need anything else. But besides that, like, what are we using in terms of microphones? We've got all this stuff behind us. Give me the rundown on what's happening with all of that.
Yeah. So the Apollo's got 8 audio inputs, and so we have kept all of our whole worship scenario down to 8 mic inputs. And so we've got 2 vocal mics. They are Shure SM7Bs. We like those mics because they've got really clean sound. They're also really tight. And so if you've got actual like room noise going on, like if you've got a loud air conditioner, or you've got a percussionist that's, even if they're electronic pads, there's still that sound of the stick hitting the pad. And so all that stuff could be captured into the vocal mic. So we've used these microphones because they're really good at eliminating that and having just what's right in front of it. And they also sound great. With these microphones in particular, though they sound great, you don't get a lot of output. And so we're using something called a cloud lifter. And all that does is it just takes the input from the microphone, the audio, and it just raises the level. And so the Apollo is receiving that same audio input, but just at a much higher level, which just lets us mix and things sound better without grain or color on it.
Yep.
So,
because you'll come across other microphones, maybe like condenser microphones, like what you've seen on hi-hats or drum overheads or something like that, that sound really great, have a ton of output, they're really clean, but they pick up a lot of what's going on around it. And so for vocals, especially in a more small, confined situation, dynamic microphones like the Shure SM7Bs, like the Shure SM58s, any sort of dynamic mic like that for vocals in this kind of situation is going to be ideal and is going to be the most, I think, effective mic to use in terms of vocals. And so we've talked about vocals. We've talked about we're just plugging an acoustic guitar into a DI or into the front of our interface. So behind me and behind us, you'll see we've got a electronic drums situation. We've got a keyboard situation. And so for keys, what we're doing is running all of our sounds off of a laptop through an interface using a software called MainStage. It's for Macs, it's $30 if you have a MacBook, and it comes with tons and tons of piano sounds, synth sounds. We've got some training content a little bit on the Worship Initiative website on how to use MainStage. We've got more in the works, so be on the lookout for that in the craft training section of the site and in learning paths. But Connor, so we're using MainStage. We've got a keyboard that's just functioning as a MIDI controller and controlling the sounds out of an interface by my laptop. We're going out into our Apollo. If you don't have that, what do you do?
right. So it's pretty simple, actually. A lot of these keyboards, we're using a Korg SV1. This keyboard in particular has a lot of really cool old vintage sounds on it. It's actually got a actual tube in it, which gives it some pretty cool color. But this keyboard and a lot of other keyboards, they just have great sounds right on them, just stored in their memory bank. And so you can run a couple of quarter inches right out the back of the keyboard straight into the Apollo or whatever interface you're using. So if you don't have MainStage or you don't have a laptop or an interface dedicated to a keys rig, it's okay. You don't need all of that stuff. You can run straight out of the keyboard.
Yeah. So any keyboard you have that's an electric keyboard is going to have audio outputs that you were probably already using at church beforehand, just plugging it into your soundboard, but now we're just plugging it in to our recording interface. So keys is a pretty simple situation. Not much is different. Percussion and drums land is a whole nother combo. Talk to me about the drum pad, how we're using it, what it does, all of that.
So for our pre-recorded worship services, we wanted some percussive elements. We wanted that texture, but obviously it's really difficult to get a full drum kit, and so we went with the electronic drum route, which is pretty popular right now with everybody doing live streams or pre-recording. And so we are using a drum pad called a Roland SPD SX. We love it. It's got 9 pads on it. They can all be programmed to do whatever sounds you want. We are using another software called Ableton to actually control those sounds, and we are doing that because we just have a lot of flexibility that way. We can quickly change the sounds of each pad based on the song we're doing. That's just what we've chosen to do. But again, kind of like the keyboard, you don't have to use the laptop. You don't have to use it as an interface. You can just use the sounds that are right there in that drum pad. So for our Roland, it's got a lot of really good drum sounds on it. They're just stored right there. They come stock out of the box, ready to go. There's also a software where you can even add in other sounds. There's lots of free sounds online. Or if you have some of your own, you can actually put them right into it. And then once again, it's stored right there, so you don't need the laptop. You don't need all of that extra stuff. And
that's great. Yeah. So the drum pad, basically, you've got pads that you hit with sticks, and you can tell each pad you can assign a certain sound to those, and a lot of them that you can buy come with sound. So it's like, this pad's the kick drum, this pad's the snare drum, and so instead of hands and feet coordination combo, you have to kind of learn a new way of playing percussion. But there's no stage volume other than the physical sound of a stick hitting a rubber pad, and so that for us is really been helpful because we wanted to create some of the energy that comes with percussion. But you'll see this later in the video. We're currently in just a classroom, and so it's not super doable to have a drum kit set up. This just runs 2 outputs like a keyboard rather than needing 8 mics like a whole drum kit or 4 mics for a stripped down thing. So it allows us a lot of a pretty broad range of sounds and options with few inputs and no stage volume. So it's pretty helpful and effective for us. So in summary, what things do you need? You need a software to record into: GarageBand, Logic, Reaper, Pro Tools. You need a recording interface of some sort that provides you enough outputs or enough inputs to take all of the audio that you want to give it. If you're wanting to use in-ears, we've got little belt packs that just take XLRs, like normal mic cables that you plug into, and then you plug your headphones. Your interface will need to have audio outputs that's enough for each ear mix. So you need a software, you need an interface with ins and outs. Any sort of dynamic microphone will work great with vocals. A DI to plug things into, like your keyboard, your drum pad, your acoustic guitar. And if you want to, you can venture into main stage, you can venture into controlling drum sounds on Ableton, but the drum pads and your keyboard will come with sounds that will work great already. The last kind of trick to all of that with pre-recorded stuff is it has to get mixed somehow. So I'm going to do some breakdowns in some other videos where I just walk through the basics of how to mix for your pre-recorded church service. So be on the lookout for those. Go find them on the Worship Initiative website or on YouTube, and I think that resource will be helpful for you because you'll know what to do once you've captured everything. So let's call. I think this has been really helpful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for for just walking through what can feel like a really overwhelming, what's already an overwhelming situation because of having to pivot with coronavirus, not being able to gather in person, and then having to somehow learn how to what feels like executive produce a television show every week. This has been helpful. If you have questions about what was covered in this video, email me, adam@worshipinitiative.com. If you're watching this on the Worship Initiative website, just click the little chat bubble at the bottom of your screen. Ask to speak with me. I'd love to serve you however I can. And until we hear from you or see you sometime, and as you continue to use the site, blessings to you and your church today.